How's it going, Teak Nation? My name is Greg Roskoff. I'm your Chief Risk Officer. I also have the pleasure of serving with all the guys on the Fraternal Services team. We've been getting a question about officer elections quite a bit and quite often. So figured I'd come to you today with 10 steps to completing your officer elections. Now, what are we going to talk about? Topics for this session. This is just one way to do it. There are other ways. There are other methods of going about it. This is just one way, but we think it's a pretty darn good way. I had a chance to talk to a bunch of people that I trust and getting some feedback. I think this is a great way to go ahead and hold those officer elections. We're going to get into the steps for those elections, and then we're going to end with the resources for you and for your officers. Now, again, I just want to reiterate, there are many ways to run an election. And most importantly, you have to ask the question, should we have elections? Step one, you got to ask the question, should we actually have these elections? Are there provisions in our bylaws? Are there things that are out there with state law? Are there things out there with how our university is operating? We have to ask that question. Number one, should we actually be doing this? There might be provisions for vacant offices that we could utilize. Or two, just go look at our bylaws. What do we have set up already? What is the current structure that we have in place? And how can we utilize that structure to best set our guys up for success? Next thing you do, set a timeline. Graph it out, list it out. Make sure people are understanding how this process is going to go. I came up with a real quick timeline here, everything from soliciting nominations, closing them, doing some video work because you can't actually be in person, and then that Zoom-based discussion right there in the bottom, and then when to actually execute the vote. And I'm going to go into each of these little pieces a little bit more in detail here, but the next step is to set a timeline, then move into our nominations. What works? What works on campus typically? 1 week, 2 weeks, we open up nominations, we make sure guys are eligible. If we just initiated a candidate class, we might have to do some education on that. We got to figure out what works. So who's going to run this process? Who's going to go out and solicit those nominations? We've got to have a timeline to get the word out so that people can nominate their candidates and then get those candidates whether or not they're going to accept or not. So nominations. After you get those nominations in, the other thing you could do, which is yet another way to take this path, is to have a nominations committee. And that nominations committee can take all the feedback from everyone and then slate the candidates, very similar to what we do at Conclave. So what works on campus versus what works now versus different scenarios, you got to figure out what's going to work for you. Have that discussion, very similar to the one that you had about whether or not we should actually be doing this. But I think if you solicit nominations like you normally would, get feedback, confirm those guys are in, then you can move on to the next step, which is to get the feedback from the guys, just that. Ask those questions. What are we normally asking from a candidate? What are the typical questions that we ask the Grammateus, the Chrysophilus, the Histor? Send those out to them. Send those out to those potential nominees. Get that same set. If people want to add in questions, now's the time to do it. But this is where we can actually hone in on the candidates, what their platform is, and why we should elect them. After we get the feedback, save yourself some time. What do we always know about elections? They go forever. So many people, so many chapters do this election process where every guy gets up, he says a speech, they forget to put a time limit on it, then they have a discussion, they debate, they debate, they debate. We want to try and save time here. We want to be able to put those platforms and those questions up on YouTube. Have them put their stump speech up there and have them answer the questions right there, and people can go in and watch it. There's a way to go to YouTube and set all these to very private settings where the only people that can watch them are ones with the links. You can message this out in your group chats. You can post it wherever you typically post things, whatever mediums you're using. But just save yourself the time of having one gigantic multi-hour long Zoom meeting by putting some things up on YouTube. When it's all said and done, go in there, delete it, get rid of it. You don't need it anymore. Save yourself the risk of having it in post. Now, I put on that timeline a suggestion to have a Zoom meeting. Well, I still think this is a great idea, but you've got to set the ground rules for the Zoom meeting. Who is going to lead? Who's going to ask questions? Who's going to direct the discussion? Who's going to set up different rooms so people can be excused and come back? You can set permissions of who comes and who goes in a Zoom meeting. Put those rules together for the election. get them out to everyone so everyone's clear and understands it, and then have your Zoom discussion on any candidates that have to be discussed further. Now, you may have to have a discussion about how the election goes. If a certain person doesn't get 50% plus for actually being elected, do you then have that elimination of those last candidates? So you might need to have 2 rounds of where it goes from nominations to then voting to then another vote. So you have to plan for this. And if you want to have multiple Zoom meetings to have, fill out that schedule, get that schedule going. Again, it's all going to be dictated on how you decide to do nominations and then how you domino effect further. So next part, how are we going to slate? How are we going to vote? We have that opportunity, like I said, do I want to just put one slate of candidates up there and then vote on that slate? Or do we want to have a vote for each office? Do we want to have voting for each office? And then if a guy isn't elected previous, he can then run for EPI. If he doesn't win for EPI, can he then run for somewhere else? So figure out how you're actually going to go about this voting process. If you need to vote on X officers and then come back and give it a certain time frame, then do that. But you got to give your guys an opportunity to get up there and vote. You got to give your guys an opportunity to take a look at those slate of candidates and make their decisions. So go in, set up a Google form. I think that's the best route to do this. It give you the answers. It can give you all sorts of great information about just the ease of access of getting it done. You can then screenshot it. You can then save it. So then if anyone wants to know the exact results, they can. Typically, we just have, 1 or 2 officers that are running this portion of it. So maybe they're the only ones that have access, and then they certify the vote with a chapter advisor. But you got to just go out and get it done. Send those things out and get the vote rolling, especially if you're going to allow people to fall down the slate and run for other offices. But again, utilize the technology. This process is going to have to happen over a couple of days. Otherwise, you're trying to cram it all into one meeting, and the fatigue of trying to sit in front of a computer and all that, it's just going to wear guys down. They're not going to pay attention. They're just going to want to get it done. They're not going to give it the seriousness that it deserves. Run the election. You've got to run the actual election. So after you have all this stuff set up, if you have everything going, go ahead and execute your election of how you need to get it done. And obviously, in this world, we're going to have to do things electronically. Maybe people are, soliciting through that Google form, which I suggest. Maybe you can have a direct text message of who your votes are back from all the members back to the 1 or 2 people that are running said election. But again, I think it's much easier just to have a form go live, send that form out, boom, certain time frame, cut it, done, move on to the next one, and then keep going from there. But if all the candidates that are eligible for each office are getting you the information, have the videos out, maybe you sent out a paper questionnaire, they filled out the paper questionnaire, and you guys posted that, everyone's going to have that opportunity to just get their information out, consume it when they need to, give people 24, maybe 48 hours, and then run the election. Get it done, certify that it's correct, have that outside party, maybe it's a chapter advisor or board chairman, make sure everything's on the up and up, and just roll it forward. Lastly, resources. Whether you're newly elected or not newly elected, we have plenty of officer resources, whether it's on the website, whether it's on the guide, whether it's calling up your regional director, your associate regional director, whether it's getting in touch with your grand province advisors or board chairman. Utilize your resources. Don't do this in a vacuum. Don't have elections and officer transitions in a vacuum. It's going to be crucial to hand off all these projects that were in motion. Chances are, come middle of March, right before spring break, there were many things that were in motion that were not finished on. Make sure you transfer over that budget. Make sure you transfer over that candidate education plan. Make sure you transfer over what those goals are, where they are in progress, into what we can do to complete them. Download that guide, talk to someone, get some input, get some help, hop on a meeting, take advantage of these resources. Same thing goes for guys that were just elected in December or January. Take advantage of these resources. You barely got started. You barely got going. Don't underestimate what it's going to take to work that muscle and get it back up and running and to finish this year out. Guys, thank you for spending some time with me. These were 10 easy, quick steps to resolve your elections, get them done, get them completed. If you have questions, please ask. I always tell people I don't read minds. My team doesn't read minds. Your volunteers can't read minds, but what we can do is answer questions. If we don't have the answers, we'll go out and get them. Please reach out. Please let us know. And If this video was helpful, you want more videos, you want more information, hey, how do I do this? Hey, what's some quick tips on that? Let us know. Happy to get in front of the computer, happy to get on a Zoom call, help you guys out the best I can. Thank you for your time, guys. Great luck with those elections. Remember, follow the process, get it out there, communicate, and all you gotta do is execute. Fraters, love the fraternity. Have a great day.